Hassan Barari is a professor of international affairs at Qatar University. Thanks for your time. We just go through some of the reactions that's been coming through. So now we're hearing from Iran's mission to the UN saying that should the Israeli regime make another mistake, then Iran's response will be considerably more severe. What are you to read into that?
Oh, I read one thing, that what the Iranians have been doing is like a tit for tat. So the Israelis have started this by attacking the diplomatic premise in Damascus, and the Iranians are actually retaliating. So as if the Iranians want to tell them that we are just doing this one attack and that's it. They don't do any further escalation. So they're warning the Israelis that they need to behave. So any attack, any counterattack by the Israelis will be responded in kind by another attack by the Iranian.
So you think it stops here? You think? I mean, we don't want to speculate. We don't know what's going to happen over the next few hours. But could the other fronts be activated? Like I was just talking to our colleague, my colleague Ali, who was saying Hezbollah has launched rockets towards the occupied Golan Heights from Lebanon.
Without doubt that the Hezbollah and probably the Houthi as well will start attacking Israel. They've been doing this actually before even this exchange between the Iranians and the Israelis. They've been doing this since the beginning of the war in Gaza. It's not changing the rules of engagement. But this is the first time that the Iranians themselves launch an attack against Israel from the Iranian territories. And this is the new one.
That's unprecedented.
And yes, this is for the first time.
Right.
So what the Iranians are trying to do is to come up with a measured, I would say, calculated attack in order to regain deterrence and not to be seen as weak in front of their own proxies.
Will Israel and the United States see this as a calculated and measured attack, or do you expect a response from the Israelis?
There's one thing in the news that I hear, that President Biden was telling the Israelis that they cannot retaliate without coordinating with the United States, meaning that the Americans want to give the Iranians something because as something for face saving. But it all depends on how the Iranians are doing this, actually. Are they going to hit civilian targets or only military? What is the scope of the damages? All these will be taken into account when Israel decides to retaliate or not. So by saying measured, I would say, I think the Iranians are really clever in not provoking Israel into retaliation simply because it's going to be against their interests, because they have no interest in a wider engagement with the Israelis.
We're also getting reaction from the EU's Joseph Borrell, who's saying that the Iran strikes on Israel are an unprecedented escalation. Do you share that assessment?
It is an escalation, but as I told you, it is calculated, it's measured. It all depends on what is actually in the Iranian pocket. Are they going to follow this by another attack? What kind of missiles they're going to use? What they're going to hit in Israel? What is the toll in Israel? Are civilians going to be killed, or only some sites, military sites? We don't know. Until now, we have no ideas about the targets. So
right, because the analysis is that the drones can take 8 or 9 hours to actually arrive to Israel. What about? Let's talk about actually the UK Prime Minister, who came out very quickly and condemned the Iranian attack on Israel. And we understand that President Biden will be giving an address to the nation at some point, we believe in the next few hours. This condemnation by the United Kingdom, we didn't see that condemnation when Israel struck that Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing the 7 commanders. And this, in fact, is the reason why Iran says it carried out this retaliation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing that this is a reflection of the double standards on the part of the Western powers. So on the one hand, they give Israel the free hand. Israel can do whatever they want to. The Israel is going to do whatever they want to do with impunity. But when some other people retaliate, they immediately condemn that. And this is actually create a kind of anti-Western sentiments in this part of the world. But also it gives them ammunition. The Iranians have seen this as a kind of double standard, and that they need to respond to. I mean, actually it contributed into the Iranian decision to respond.
How do you think this is going to impact the war on Gaza?
Well,
with the world's attention now on this,
this is one thing that everybody is speculating about this. I think there will be a little bit kind of a lull, maybe. So it would be a low-intensity warfare until this comes to an end. I don't think that the Israelis have an interest in getting into Rafah, for instance, these days. But also it all depends on how the Israelis, read the situation. I know some right-wing politicians in the government will see this as an opportunity because the world attention is shifted onto Iran, Israeli, and then they can do something probably horrendous in Gaza.
Okay, Hassan Barari, thank you so much for your analysis. Dorsa Jabbari, once again, joining us from Tehran. Dorsa, the Iranian mission to the UN has been speaking out. Are you hearing anything from Iranian officials where you are on the ground?
Well, we heard from the Iranian Foreign Minister, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, who posted on his social media account on X, saying that they have given the necessary warnings to the United States. But I think it's more important now to highlight what we've just seen on X, posted by Iran's permanent mission to the United Nations, possibly providing a window of what is Iran thinking in the coming hours and what they're hoping for following this attack, which continues as we speak towards Israel. Conducted on the strength of Article 51 of the UN Charter pertaining to legitimate defense, Iran's military action was in response to the Zionist regime's aggression against our diplomatic premises in Damascus. The matter can be deemed concluded. However, should the Israeli regime make another mistake, Iran's response will be considerably more severe. It is a conflict between Iran and the rogue Israeli regime from which the U.S. must stay away. I think this is an olive branch being extended by the Iranian officials at the UN, saying that this attack that is happening at the moment is going to be the response that Iran will have to the Israeli act, the strike in its consulate section in Damascus on April 1st, and warning at the same time that the United States should not get directly involved. Any kind of assistance provided to the Israeli military will be seen as direct interference by the United States, and that is something Iran has warned against, saying that this is a conflict between Iran and Israel, and they want it to stay that way. There is no desire for the Iranians to further expand this conflict.
For Iran, Dorsa, we heard over and over again that they felt like they had no choice this time around but to respond to Israel, despite this having happened before. I mean, it's not the first time that Israel has killed Iranian commanders on Syrian soil.
No, just since October 7th, in Syria alone, 18 Revolutionary Guard members have been killed by Israeli airstrikes alone. Now, that is not even considering Lebanon and also attacks that have happened over the years inside Iran. And of course, this is something Iran felt like was just crossing a red line. The Iranians had said that this was an attack on their own soil, and that the supreme leader said this was something that Israel will be made to feel sorry for. They will be punished. The Iranian officials said that this was an act of war by Israel. And the fact that the international community refused to condemn Israel for this action at the UN Security Council within 24 hours of the attack was really something the Iranians took into consideration when deciding how to respond. Now, according to the Revolutionary Guards, this mission is being called the True Promise, and a statement that they've issued, in it they say that the decision was taken by the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, along with other defense officials, which of course would have to be approved by the commander-in-chief in Iran, that is the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This is the first time in Iran's history that the country has taken action against Israel, despite being in this shadow war for over 4 decades since the revolution of 1979 in this country. Certainly, this was something the supreme leader himself would have wanted to avoid at all costs, but not acting or not reacting to Israel's actions would have been very, very costly for Iran. Not only to its proxies in the region would they have seemed weak, but also inside the country there was a lot of pressure for Iran to respond directly to Israel, because if you recall, in 2020, when the American government carried out a attack that killed Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, Iran responded by launching 13 missiles towards a U.S. base in Ain al-Assad. They didn't hit anyone. They didn't kill any American soldiers. And that felt like it wasn't a strong enough response because there was no direct hit to the U.S. forces. It was seen as more a symbolic gesture. This time around, it was felt like they had to provide a stronger response, and launching hundreds of drones and missiles towards Israel is seemingly what they believe to be an appropriate response, and that we've seen from the explanation provided by Iran's mission to the United Nations that this is an act of self-defense.
And Dorsa, what are we learning about these drones that were launched from Iran and their capabilities?
Well, from what we've seen online, they haven't officially announced, the Revolutionary Guard Aerospace Division hasn't officially announced what they've launched, what type of drones they've launched. But from the footage that we've seen on social media, they appear to be the Shahed 136 drones, which have capability of about 185 kilometers per hour. That's the speed. These are drones we've seen used extensively by Russian forces in Ukraine. So we know the kind of damage they're capable of. But of course, they take a while to reach their destination. And of course, from Iran to Tel Aviv is roughly about 1,500 kilometers. This is seen as possibly a deliberate choice by the Iranian military to give the Israeli forces enough time to respond before these drones hit their their targets. So this is seen as a possible a way for Iran to both simultaneously achieve two things it needs to do. One, to deliver a response, and second, to not escalate further into a full-on regional war.
Dorsa, thank you so much. I'll have to cross over to Tel Aviv. Thanks, Dorsa, for that reporting from Tehran.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.